Hi, everyone. So good to see you here for today's workshop, How to Shift from Overworked and Overwhelmed to Thriving Sustainable Success. So here we are entering fall. Really, it's starting to feel like fall in the Bay Area. And fall is really a time that is good for sort of starting to look inwards, introspection. It's also a time in Chinese medicine that is linked with the organ of the lung and the emotion of grief. And so it's a time where there's naturally a bit of sadness that comes up. For those of us who celebrate the Jewish high holidays, there's a lot of sadness that comes in the fall, right? Anyone who studies Ayurveda knows that the vata, the winds coming up, right? There's a lot that happens in fall that's about letting go, releasing what we've accomplished and what we've done, and harvest the fruits of our labor from spring and summer, and letting it go, starting to slow down as we move into winter. So fall is a really good time to start to look at some old patterns that maybe you're ready to let go of. And for me, with the slow power process that I'm teaching today, it's about letting go of overwork and overdoing it for the sake of meeting other people's needs and people pleasing and meeting other people's expectations at the expense of yourself. So there's a new way of being and a new possibility that I'm going to introduce you to today in our talk. So let's jump in. First of all, I like to do this at the beginning of any of my group things. I'm just going to take a minute and each of you just put your feet on the ground. We're just going to do a short grounding meditation, real short, just so you can start to feel into your body. So feet on the ground, hands loosely in your lap. Start to deepen your breath, pulling the breath down into your lower belly. And as you release the breath, letting everything go, letting go of anything that you had to do before this session. Breathing in presence, letting go of anything you have to do after. Breathing in presence. Feeling the support of the chair, feeling all the places that your body makes contact with the chair and your feet on the earth. You can even shrug your shoulders up and back and sort of open your heart a little bit. Just making the internal commitment to be present in your body and have an open mind, an open heart and mind about what you're going to hear today. Some of it may be something you've heard before, some of it may seem new, some of it you may believe, some of it not so much. But just settling into the fact that anything is possible. Elevating your head just a little bit by tucking your chin, imagining the crown of your head opening up and extending just another inch, feeling your heart and torso open up for a little bit more breath. One more deep breath here. And let it all go. Feeling the support of the chair and the earth. Just noticing that you are supported. There is support all around you. You are held in this moment and always. You can relax into that feeling of being held and grounded. And while you're here, just let one thing bubble up from your heart. Why are you here today? What is it that you're really trying to learn, trying to know for yourself today? Name one thing, just to yourself. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just jot one quick note if you have the thing that you're trying to leave today with. Great. So some of you know me. I'm Kelsey Lowitz, and I'm a transformational life coach and an acupuncturist. And I'll just tell you a little bit of my story because it informs how I came up with slow power and why slow power is so near and dear to my heart. So I've been a healer for the past 10 years, but before that, I had a long career in the corporate world. Before that, I was a teacher. And before that, I was a student. So basically, for the past 48 years of my life, I've been an overworking, overachieving type, which means in the corporate world, actually starting in school, I worked and worked and worked for other people. So getting good grades, the next achievement, right? The next grade, the next achievement, the next reward, then the next job, then the next promotion, then the next raise, right? I was always sort of just pushing myself. There was always more to do. And I set out whatever I set my mind to do, I could do. I even got married to the right kind of guy, at 27, and then bought a house and did all the things by the outward ways that we measure success. And yet I woke up in my early 30s and was deeply unfulfilled. And through the healing process, then I ended up getting a divorce. And through that healing process, I started yoga and meditation and doing a lot of more heart-centered work. And through that healing process, I learned how to tap into my own heart and body, listen to my inner wisdom, and feel my feelings. All of which are really hard to do when you're just moving and doing and doing and going. And so those are core components that through my own healing process, I've been able to put into the slow power process, which I'm going to share with you today. What I ended up finding, and eventually I left the corporate world to find more heart-centered, more fulfilling work. This isn't about you having to leave your job though. This is about finding what your goals are and finding a way to meet them in a way that feels easier, that you're full of more ease, calm, and flow, and that it's possible. So what's the actual definition of slow power? Slow power is the clarity of intuition, vitality in the body, and openness of heart that come from letting go and slowing life down. Unlike the do more, get ahead approach that's encouraged by our culture, but inevitably leads to resentment and burnout, this kind of power will keep you fulfilled and energized as you take your life to the next level, as you meet your goals. So that's the possibility that I'm here to tell you about today. That it's not either you meet your goals or you meet other people's needs. It's not either you help others or you help yourself. It's not either I'm successful or I'm relaxed. It's both and, that you can create a life where you can slow down and succeed. In fact, the secret sauce is slowing down so that you can succeed more, right? And that's the part that took me years to believe was possible. So chances are, if you're here, at some level you're overworking, because the title of this talk was Go from Overworked and Overwhelmed to Thriving Sustainable Success. So you wouldn't have come if you didn't think at some level you're overworking. So that's not new news to you. And so you probably know also that when you overwork, life is hard. And often overworking when life is hard makes you tired and stressed and actually makes meeting your goals harder. You may have seen or may believe me when I say that life is easier when you're rested and happier, and life just feels easier and you actually meet your goals when you're not working so hard. But it's the cognitive dissonance. But then how come that doesn't work for me? How come I've met my goals all my life through working harder? Well, that's the truth, right? That's the part of my story that I sort of just left out. I learned how to be an overworker because it brought me success, right? So it was a way, it was my tool, right? Work harder, work faster, work smarter than everybody else. You'll get the promotion, you'll get the raise, you'll get the A, you'll get the reward, right? In my late 30s and 40s is when I've decided that there's another way. And so that's what I mean by sustainable success, right? We can work like that in our 20s and maybe even in our 30s. It's just not sustainable. Nobody my age is going to want to work the way I worked in my 20s at Leapfrog, or, stay until 8 o'clock at night, working until 9 o'clock, getting up at 7 o'clock the next morning to start again. I'm not going to do it anymore, right? Or we don't want to. So since you probably know that you overwork and you have a sense that overworking isn't helping you, then why don't we just change? Like, why don't we just snap our fingers and say, oh, I'm going to do it another way? Resistance. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about resistance. If I don't mention the resistance right now, lots of things can happen. So that won't help you on your path. Resistance is when when you try something new, there's a little bit of fear that comes up, and we experience it as resistance. Anytime we're trying to give up an old pattern or change a way of being, we are going to come up against resistance. And let me give you a little exercise, a mini exercise, so that you can feel this. If I ask you to come up with the answer of 2 times 2, you would do it really quickly, right? 2 times 2 is 4. And it didn't take you any time. You have a well-worn pathway from that question to that answer, so it was easy. Now, close your eyes. I'm going to ask you a different question. What's 19 times 46? So that feeling that you just got was like, ooh, I don't like that answer. I don't have the well-worn path. I could figure it out. You're smart. You could take out the paper, carry the 1. You could get out a calculator. There's lots of ways to get to that answer. But that first feeling that you get is like, ooh, that's not easy. That's what happens. And then when you have that feeling, then you might then you give yourself a story about that feeling. Oh, I'm not good at math. I hate math, or whatever. So anytime we're trying something new and we get to that point of resistance, noting that and just noting and telling yourself a different story is the way to change long-term. So how does resistance show up here in this kind of thing or in my coaching work? Well, you might get distracted. You might say, oh, I'm just going to check Facebook real quick, or Instagram. I'm just going to check my email or send a quick text. You might just disbelief, or I don't believe her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You might go into judgment. You might dissociate. Actually, I do this sometimes where something is new for me and I only realize that because all of a sudden I'm confused. And something like, I'm a pretty smart person. It's not that complicated. Why am I confused right now? I usually can back it up and go, oh, there's some fear. There's some resistance. And so just know that when you're learning something new, resistance can show up in a bunch of different ways. So, this doesn't make sense to me. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I don't believe it. All of those things, just say, oh, that's resistance. And just for this hour, I'm going to ask you to note the resistance, maybe take a note of it and just call it out. Oh, I see that. That's a fear. That's a resistance. It's hard to give up an old way of being that's been like a trusty source of success, right? So I'm asking you to do something that's hard. And it's also a practice, because this is the thing about resistance and new things. You don't just hear about it once during this hour and then tomorrow it's all that way. You have to practice some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So what can you expect today? Well, I'm going to share some ideas from the slow power process and from my slow power coaching world. You're going to get some practices and we're going to practice some things. I'm going to give you some time to journal because I do think writing out your thoughts and having some space for that is really important. And you're going to get a lot out of today. You're not going to leave today and be like, oh, I've got it. I never have to think about this again. But you're going to get a good start on it. And at the very end, if you have an extra minute, I hope you'll stay. I'm going to take 5 minutes and tell you about a slow power program that I'm launching soon. So I hope you'll stay. All right. So big idea number 1, you are overworking and it's keeping you stuck. So we know you're overworking and it's keeping you stuck. And also your tendency to overwork comes from a fear of not being good enough. And from that, your inability to set boundaries. So you're overworking because you're afraid of not being good enough. And so you don't set boundaries. And that pattern is keeping you stuck. So when your worth and your value are tied to the results you're achieving at any level, and when it's tied to the praise you're getting or the validation you're seeking, so it's harder to set good boundaries and say no. And so you overwork. What's the impact of that? Well, your mind is always going, right? It's always on. Your nervous system can't deeply rest. You'll be moving too fast because you're always in doing mode. Because if your nervous system can't rest, you can't go into being mode. You're always in doing mode. And so you take on too much. Oh, I can do that. I'll do that. You often then feel like you're the only one who can do it. And so you end up feeling unsupported because you're the one doing it all. And when you're in that doing mode and doing it all, you can't connect deeply with yourself or others. And when you can't connect deeply with yourself, you can't experience deep happiness and pleasure. And you often feel angry and resentful of the very people you're trying to help. Eventually, you burn out, you feel dead inside, and maybe get depressed. Some combination of that, right? So if you keep sacrificing your boundaries and you keep feeling anger and just pushing it down, you'll just go into a depression. And I can tell you stories of my own from a corporate world, which I'll tell you later, which was exactly that. What's the opposite of that? Like, what's the vision that we're going for? Well, when you aren't overworking, when you are setting good boundaries, when you know your worth separate from your accomplishments, you feel alive. You set good boundaries, of course, around your time, and which means you can easily say no to misaligned demands for your time. You know your values, you know your needs, and you actively make space to meet them. You ask for support from others and you easily receive it. You don't feel like everything is your responsibility, so you take less responsibility for other people's stuff. And therefore you feel less anger and resentment because you aren't letting your boundaries get crossed. There's more space in your schedule. And you actually then feel like there's more space in your body for breath and for connecting to yourself, like we did at the beginning of the call. You take care of your body then and your health, and you sleep more soundly. And not from a place of I should be, but like you naturally, joyfully move your body because there's space to do so. And the animal part of you actually wants that, not from a shaming place. And you can tune into your own deepest desires and your inner wisdom to guide your choices, leaving you the energy, the inspiration, and the motivation to do the work you're called to do. So I want you to, in your journal right now, take a moment and think about, where in your life are you working too hard? Do you know you're working too hard? So jot yourself a few notes. Where are you working too hard? Where are you overextending or overgiving or taking more responsibility than you need to? It could be at work, not delegating or asking for enough support, or at home with your partner or kids or family. It could be in your community where you overgive to others' well-being or take over responsibility. Just take a moment and get clear on all the places you might be overgiving. Okay. Second question, how is it working for you? What's the impact of that overgiving? Are you getting praise for being helpful? Does that feel good? Are you staying connected to others through your giving? Is that one of the reasons? Do you get to feel generous, kind, or noble? Are you getting promoted, awards, raises, kudos? Because there is a reason that we're doing it, right? Do you get to feel loved? And alternatively, are you feeling resentful, burned out? What's it costing you now? What would be different in your life if you could change this pattern of overworking? For me, I know I would be more present with my daughter and my partner. I would feel healthier. I would probably have more patience and clients too. And I would definitely feel less resentful. Speaking of, I'll just tell that story real quick. One time at the very beginning of my practice, of my acupuncture practice, there was somebody in the neighborhood who called me either midday or towards the end of the day and said, can you get me in? My mother died. I'm really having a hard time. And it was a neighbor that's kind of not influential, but well known in the neighborhood. And I really wanted to please him, but I think I was already seeing like 10 people that day. And I was exhausted. And he said, you can't just squeeze me in at the end of the day. And of course, what did I say? Because this was 5 years ago. I said, sure, I'll do that for you. so sacrificed a boundary right there. I was exhausted. I was tired. I had my day scheduled, but I wanted to please. I wanted to get a new client and I wanted to make him feel good and I wanted him to be influential and tell other people. Well, you can imagine how that one turned out. I can tell you, he did not like his treatment at all. It was maybe one of the worst treatments I've ever given to that point. And maybe he even said it. I can't remember now. I've almost blocked it out. So it really backfired. Not only did I not get a new client, it's just a really good story about I was overworked, overwhelmed, tired, no energy. And with acupuncture, it's really like you need to be, energized to give. But I think the same thing applies in most lines of work. So that was in my recent work. In my corporate life, I remember when I worked at this it was small at the time and it was growing, this company called Leapfrog, which is an educational toy company. Because it was growing, the people who had been there before had a lot of institutional knowledge, and I loved that people needed me and asked me for stuff all the time. I felt important and I got validated because everybody needed stuff from me and I felt like the center of everything. And so I would do stuff for other people all the time. I was like the go-to girl, right? Well, after a year of that, I realized I now had to stay till 8 o'clock at night to get my work done because I was doing everybody else's work during the day. And guess what? Well, one, I was tired and burnt out. Two, I wasn't getting the promotions or raises because I wasn't elevating my own work. I was just doing other people's work. I was the go-to girl. So that was a really good lesson for me when I finally learned through a series of events to say no and set boundaries. That's when I started actually doing better and getting the real praise that I was looking for, and also could go off Prozac and all the things. So I'm sure you guys have stories of but really like realizing that the overwork that we think is going to drive our success, because it has for so long, in the end is not the answer. And knowing your self-worth so that you feel strong enough to set your boundaries, that's the power. That's where you're harnessing the power of ease and calm to set the boundaries, say no to overwork. And from there is where you get the clients who refer you, the work promotes you, right? So it's actually not the overwork anymore. It might've been in grade school, right? All right. Any questions? Okay. So big idea number 2. Let me think of how I want to say this. You're worthy of love even when you aren't achieving anything. You're good enough just as you are. And it's actually the self-compassion and the self-love that allows you to take your foot off the gas just a little bit. That's what causes you to succeed. That we think when we're driving ourselves with this like inner self-critic, that you need to do more, you're not good enough, not whatever words your self-critic uses, that's what's going to keep us motivated to move and succeed. But it's actually the opposite, that wears you down. That kind of motivation through criticism and you're not good enough and self-doubt doesn't work. But motivating through loving yourself and self-compassion is what's going to work in the long run, or at least if you're going to adopt the slow power way. What happens when you believe that your worth is tied to your achievements? Well, you only feel good enough when you're achieving and getting positive feedback from others. In the absence of feedback, you assume the worst. So you drive yourself hard all the time, seeking more validation, because when nobody's saying anything, you don't feel good enough. So you need to be doing more, getting praise. It's easy to go into people-pleasing mode and neglect yourself from that place because you're really focused outward instead of inward. And that's a killer for slow power. You're hard on yourself, which actually ironically can make you hard on others. And depending on your role as a leader, that's actually not good for your long-term growth either, being really hard on yourself because you're hard on others, and you know how that goes. And then most importantly, you don't feel your feelings, right? If you're driving yourself from that self-critical place, some part of you knows that that's not true and feels sad and neglected, and you have to push that down. And not feeling your feelings is a problem. You'll feel unheard and unseen and disconnected. When you know your own worth, that's outside of your achievements and outside of the praise you're getting, and you love yourself regardless of what you're achieving or even mistakes you've made, one, you're willing to try new things and take risks because you're not afraid to fail. So you can set big goals for yourself. Two, you aren't driven by the need to please others at the expense of yourself. So you aren't as outward focused, and you're able to slow down, listen to your heart, and feel your feelings, which is really hard for those of us who are so used to doing and moving so fast, which allows you to feel more deeply connected to yourself and therefore to others. And ultimately, you have more peace of mind, more calm, and you're more grounded. And from that place, that's where deep success comes. So, Tara Moore, who's one of my favorite coaches, I've read her Playing Big book. She says, when you think you need more self-discipline, you actually need more self-love. I can't tell you the number of times I've had this call with a client, and even with myself. Oh, I'm just feeling lazy. I can't, I'm feeling lethargic. I'm malaise. We were just talking about earlier. I need some motivation. And so you're kind of like motivating yourself with this, like, why am I so lazy? Maybe if I had someone I could check in with and I had a schedule and blah, blah, blah. And really, yes, self-discipline in some ways can work, right? But discipline coming from driving yourself from your inner critic and versus discipline versus coming from, I love myself, and so I'm going to institute these practices as part of a discipline to help me achieve my goals. It's got a subtly different energy. When I sit down, I'm trying to blog, I'm trying to write more, outreach to my clients more. When I sit down to try to write or prepare a program or something like that, I will often the words won't come, and I'll just sit at the computer longer and longer and longer and get distracted. So that's my resistance. I'll go check Facebook, and then I'll check Instagram, and then I'll go to the refrigerator and get a snack. And then I'm in self-criticism because I'm in comparing mind, and then I don't feel good about myself and whatever. And so it's like, do I actually need more self-discipline right then, or do I need more self-love? And in my experience, and a core component of the slow power process is the self-compassion is what is going to enable deeper, longer lasting, sustainable success. So let me do an exercise with you quickly. If you can, think of something in your life, well, either where you're stuck and you're not achieving what you want to be achieving, so a goal or some place that you're pushing up against and you can't get there, or someplace that you've failed or made a mistake recently and you're kind of beating yourself up and feeling not good enough. So bring to mind some area of your life where you're in a struggle like that. And go ahead and close your eyes and bring it to mind. And you can put one hand on your heart or both hands on your heart if you want to. We're going to do a little exercise that's about feeling your feelings and bringing self-compassion to that part of you inside that feels not good enough sometimes. So, I skipped a question, but I'll go back to it in a minute. Well, for example, the one thing is I'm recording this, I'm doing this talk again because the last time I did it, I didn't hit record. You can imagine how mad I was about that at myself. And I just was like, okay, self-compassion. What are you going to do? Self-compassion. So I have one to bring to mind. So go ahead and close your eyes. Bring to mind your struggle and just feel what you feel in your body when you think about the struggle that you're in. The first step is to just bring mindful awareness to the sensations in your body. If you want to name it, if you can say, I'm feeling angry right now, or I'm feeling frustrated or anxious. You can name it if you know the emotion. And if not, just feel the feelings and then investigate them. Oh, first, allow them to be there. So it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay to feel afraid, especially now, right? This is everything you're feeling is totally okay. So let it be there. So you want to recognize the feeling. You can name it if you want, allow it to be there. And then you're going to investigate it and sort of, what does it feel like when I'm angry at myself like that? Where do I feel it? What does it feel like? Where do you feel the sensation? Describe it. Is it tight? Is it hot? Is there a texture, a color, or a temperature? I just got off the phone with someone who said, in my last session, said it was red and it was hot and it was in her heart. So you might have a color, you might not see all of that, but just let whatever you see and sense come up in your awareness. It might feel like a knot in your stomach or rocks in your stomach, tight in your jaw. It depends on what you're feeling, but anywhere is okay. And just take a minute and explore it. Breathe into it. And the next step is to know that you are not alone, that it's totally normal to have this feeling, and that there's probably millions of people feeling exactly the same way you are right now. Just allow that to be okay. And just know you're not alone. Now go back to the feeling, and I want you to ask it. So sort of connect with your higher self and ask the sensation. And you're connecting to your higher self, and you're also asking sort of the highest energy of whatever it is you're looking at. What do you want me to know? Is there a message for me in this tight heart or in this tight jaw? Is there something you want me to know? You're asking your body to tell you. Wait for the messages to come through. And now you want to thank it. You want to thank yourself. You want to give yourself a little bit of nurturing energy here, as if you were comforting a small child or a pet or a good friend who is having the same issue. What would you say to him or her? You know, you might rock her a little bit and say, it's okay. It's okay. This kind of self-love might feel a little over the top for what I went through. Like, I forgot to hit record, but I will tell you, the more you practice this kind of self-love the more you notice all the places where you're beating yourself up for being imperfect, the more you realize that that isn't helping you move forward. And once you can love yourself enough to move forward, you will move forward in more of a slow power way. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And if you want, you can jot down a few messages that you got from your inner wisdom there. And then I'm going to ask you two more questions. Where are you being too hard on yourself? Where are you driving yourself from a place of self-criticism instead of self-love? What's the impact of that you know of? And what might be possible for you if you truly felt worthy of love just for being you, separate from your achievements? What risk might you take? What goal might you set for yourself? What behavior would you stop doing? Okay. All right. Big idea number 3. I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning because we're moving into fall, but obviously, there are seasons, right? There's seasons of the year, spring, summer, autumn, winter. There's seasons of the month for women, right? So our menstrual cycles have a season. The bleed, right, is winter. That's when you're kind of supposed to go inside and get dark and rest. And then we come out of that and we have spring, which is the follicular phase, and we've got lots of estrogen and it feels good and you sleep well. And then ovulation is like summer, bing, right? And then luteal phase is when PMS might start to settle in a little, start to go inside, slow down, not a time to like take on a bunch of new things, right? There's seasons of our day, right? And not everybody has the same season of their day, but most people sort of wake up in the morning, have more energy, right? And then by midday, they start to, and then by evening, they wind down and then it's sleep again, right? So as I see some yawns, as we're getting to evening, that's a totally normal response, right? This is that season of your day where you should be winding down. Where high achieving women often go wrong is we feel like we can power through and have all of our days and weeks and months be spring and summer, planting seeds of new possibility and then harvesting them and growing them and everything. And if we just do that over and over and over again, you're going to burn out, right? It is impossible to sprout new seeds of possibility and keep in creation mode all the time. I know for myself during COVID, because there was no place to go, there was no place to go on vacation. I just worked. I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and I basically burned myself out. So this is a lesson that even though I know slow power and I use slow power in my life all the time, it needs to be practiced, right? So I got out of practice because of the way of the world, and I wasn't letting myself cycle, right? Having a spring, a summer, and a fall, even though it's not always correlated exactly to the season. So big idea number 3 is that when you create the space to rest, slow down, attune inward, you ultimately find more energy, motivation, and inspiration to do your work in the world. And that the success comes from the pause. I have story after story after story where it's hard to believe that, right? So I was planning a retreat last year. And I thought I wanted to plan a retreat because, my big vision is eventually to have retreats and groups and all this stuff. But I was like, no, it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be, I don't feel like marketing it and blah, blah. So I had mentioned in one of my groups before the summer that I was maybe going to have a retreat in the fall. This is last year. But I was kind of dragging my heels. I was up against some resistance, but I was also burnt out. So my coach said to me, go away. I went to this family camp. She said, go away, get offline for a week and just rest and don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Nothing. And see what happens. If you come back and you have the energy and you want to do it, great. If not, no big deal. No harm, no foul. And I go away and I don't think about it. And I rest. I deeply rest. There was no self-service. I get back after the week. And the first thing I do when I look at my phone and check my email, an email from one of my clients who lives in Oregon said, hey, Kelsey, just checking in about the slow power retreat. I want to book my flights. What are the dates? And I was like, okay, there's my answer. But I needed to rest and let go of the doing. I think I needed to rest and let go of the doing for that message to come in for me to then have the energy to do it. So the pausing, it's not always about going on a week-long vacation without self-service, but there's some version of that if you can put that in your everyday, you'll reap the benefits. So one of the habits that I try most of the time to do is not have my phone or any electronics on for the first hour of my day. That's when I can do my morning ritual, when I can meditate or do qigong or drink my hot lemon water or journal or whatever it is. But building in the pauses, even if it's not sitting, maybe it's to walk around the block, but building in the pause so that you're not go, 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 makes you more productive and more successful. You're not losing time by taking lunch away from your desk. You're actually probably gaining time because the effectiveness after lunch, right? I'm seeing nodding. I know you know what I mean. It's not about taking your foot off the gas so that you're just coasting that down the hill. It's about taking the foot off the gas and finding a new source of energy to power you up the hill. a renewable source of energy, an unlimited source of energy and power. And it requires trust, because it's saying, oh, I trust that I can step away from my desk, or I can step away from this task. And when I come back, I'm going to be able to do it better having taken the break. So the seasons are important. So honoring the seasons of your day, your week, your month, and your year. Okay, so one last journaling question. If you had more energy, inspiration, and motivation and power, what would you most want to create in your life right now? It could be a health goal, it could be a business goal, or a relationship goal. Maybe it's one of each. Is there something that you're like, oh, this is really like, if you had all the energy, all the motivation from that deeper sense of self-love, what would you create? Does anyone want to share? No. Okay. I won't make anybody share. I'm holding you in that goal, whatever it is. All right. So those are the three big ideas. You're overworking and it's keeping you stuck. And your overwork comes from not feeling good enough, so you're not setting good boundaries. Number two, when you think you need more self-discipline, you probably need more self-love, that it's from that loving place that you're actually going to be able to achieve your goals. I talk about this with, I'm not a weight loss coach, but I have clients over the years who wanted to lose weight, and they feel like if they bring self-love to the process, they'll just sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day. And it's really not until they bring self-love to it that they make wiser choices from a place. It's like the diet culture is not self-loving, it's self-critical, right? But we think that's how we're going to lose weight. But when you really love yourself deeply from the inside out, you just make wiser choices. You're like, oh, I want to sleep better, so I'm not going to have that chocolate ice cream after dinner because sleep is really important to me, right? So it's just a different way of looking at how we drive ourselves. I think diets are a great example there. And the third big idea that's part of the Slow Power program is the seasons, the seasonality of our energy, and not being able to be in go, go, go all the time, and really honoring that that's okay. It's not just okay, like, oh, okay, I'm in fall and winter, but like it's necessary. It's critical. It's not like, oh, I could love myself even if I need to have a day on the couch. No. It's the missing link, right? It's not just something you can put up with. It's something you have to plan. To have long-lasting, thriving, sustainable success. So I want to take just a few minutes of your time to tell you about the Slow Power program that is starting in a little over a week, October 21st. I learned what I'm going to share. These lessons that I'm sharing with you are so important to me because they come from my own healing process, and they're so important to me because that I don't want to keep them to myself. I want women like you and women like me to be able to be successful in a male-dominated world, to be successful in the corporate world or in whatever entrepreneurial, or even just in your family, right? In whatever way you want to be successful, to do it from your feminine energy, to do it from this slow power place, because that's the kind of renewable power that will last you forever, right? It's not the kind that burns out. It's like solar power. Solar power, slow power. All right. So in the program, it's a small group program where we'll meet online on Zoom right now. Eventually there will be in-person things, but not for this program. This unique program is gonna be modeled after the seasons. Speaking of the seasons, where the part one, we're going to go dark and get honest. We're going to start with winter, even though it's technically fall. So we're going to model our program after the seasons in our own little microcosm, where winter ushers in a time of darkness, releasing and letting go. And together we'll assess what isn't working about your current situation, if anything, will identify your inner critic's role in keeping you stuck in your old ways of being, and the resistance around that, and create space for you to let go of the old and invite in a new way, with practices and tools, right? And then part 2, we'll plant the seeds of possibility in the spring. In spring is when we know that buds and flowers and new possibilities awaken and grow. And here's where we'll explore as a group new ways for you to connect with your own, your heart, your intuition, and your inner wisdom. So I shared with you a little bit the self-compassion process that I went through, but we'll do other activities and experiences to say, how can I make connecting with my inner wisdom a part of my everyday world? And from in spring, you're going to make the clear choice to step into a new path and create the intentions and practices that will help you reach your new possibility, and the structures, the accountability structures to help you do that too. Then part 3 is about activating your slow power vision, right? Slow power is about action, activation, and infinite potential. In this part of the program, you get to work on your vision, creating your life to work the way you most deeply want, right? Remember that thing you said at the end that you might change? Like, you'll be putting things in place to actually create that goal. Whether or not the goal you came up with in this is the goal that you're working on in the program is another story. And you'll identify blocks and negative thought patterns that distract you from your own goals and help you solidify your boundaries and your self-care routines so that you can make your dream a reality. And then part 4 is really about integrating everything on a deep cellular level. It's fall, right? Fall is harvest and gratitude and celebration, which needs to be part of the process. You'll claim what you know and integrate the process so that you can bring slow power to every new goal, right? So you'll work on one goal in the program, but you'll be able to know it and bring it to every goal. Every time you start a new program, how do I implement the slow power process here? How can I do this in a slow power way? It's going to be a small group. There'll be, coaching in the groups. There'll be breakout rooms. There'll be worksheets and things to do, but it's really experiential and a great accountability structure for you to say, okay, I want to change this way that I'm being, and I'm ready to practice it in community. And that is it. There'll be a Facebook group where we can communicate between, a private Facebook group where we can communicate between. You get a coaching session with me at the beginning to sort of lay it out with you. And that's it. I have a website, which I will put in the chat with some more details on it. And I have early bird pricing. So if you're interested, you want to get in the early bird pricing, let me know. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Oh, how do I do that? Let's see. Any questions? I'm not looking at you guys right now, so I need to come back to that in a second. But if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll take any questions when I come back to the screen. And you can go ahead and take yourself off mute if you have any questions. And if not, thank you all so much for coming, for taking the time today to be with me, to listen to Slow Power. This is so important. And I hope that you take 1 or 2 things. Oh, before you leave, write down in your journal right now, what's one thing you're taking away from today that you are committing to yourself about the Slow Power process that you think you can implement today, this week, so that you can have more calm, ease, and joy. And if anyone wants to share, you can either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. And if not, that's okay too. I trust that you got what you needed from today and that you will share it with someone else, because when we share, I see self-love. When we share what we learn, that's when we actually learn it, right? Each one teach one, whatever that saying is, like we learn by teaching. So if you can share one thing you learned from today with someone else that you love in your life, then you can keep each other accountable too. I'm available for questions if anyone wants to stay after. I'm going to hit stop on the recording now. Yay, I remembered. And I hope to see you all soon.